Hello, everyone, and welcome. We'll call a meeting of the Madison City Commission to order for the meeting of November 26, 2012. Jeff, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Delzer,
Here.
Commissioner Erickson, Commissioner Waldner,
Here.
Commissioner Abraham,
Here.
Mayor Hexum.
Here. You have the minutes of the November 19th meeting as a part of your record. Are there any changes to the minutes of the last meeting?
Make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the minutes of the November 19th meeting as prepared. Any questions or speaking? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. You have the agenda for this meeting before you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I'd make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. Any questions or speaking? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. We have several items listed under appearances, acknowledgments, and correspondence. Number one is to acknowledge the October investment report, the bills for ratification, and gross salaries.
Make a motion to acknowledge the October investment report, bills for ratification, and gross salaries. Second.
Motion is made and seconded that we acknowledge the October investment report, bills for ratification, and gross salaries. Any questions or speaking on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. Number two, under appearances, we have representatives here from DG&R, which means DeWild, Grant and Rickert Consulting Engineering Firm, regarding discussion on our long-range electrical study report. I didn't write down the names. Chad, maybe you want to introduce the gentleman or have them introduce themselves here for the benefit. We do record the meeting, so for
Sure.
rebroadcast, so.
I can do that.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Chad Rasmussen is here. He's been here several times. Maybe not all of you have been here, some of the new commission members. And Jared Luzzi, both from DGR, here to present the long-range plan. With about a 10-year plan is kind of what we anticipate, depending on funding availability, of course. Dennis Poppin and I had worked with DGR as they prepared this plan, and then also I think there was one, maybe two meetings with the Electric Advisory Committee as this was developed, and also, and so I just wanted to take a few time, Dennis and I take a little time to go over the plan and let you ask any questions, and as we will be using that plan from here forward for quite some time to make improvements and consider items for improvements to our electric system. So please proceed.
Thank you. Yes, as Chad mentioned, my name is Chad Rasmussen. With PGR Engineers, Jared and I are both out of Rock Rapids, Iowa. Our company also has an office in Sioux Falls, but Rock Rapids is about 30 miles east of Sioux Falls. We've been here before. I'll just start with a little historical perspective, I guess. 10 years ago, I sat in the same chair and did this, and we came up with a similar report to the one that we're presenting today. However, I'm happy to tell you that things are in a lot better shape on your electric system today than they were 10 years ago. And that's because of the diligence and foresight of the staff here that have gone ahead and made several improvements to the system. Back 10 years ago, you were at a point in your electric system where you were pretty much maxed out on capacity. And you were in some serious need of some pretty major improvements in terms of a new substation as well as some new distribution circuits, and needed a lot of conversion to take place. And then you went ahead and did a lot of work to make that happen. You built a new substation on the southeast side of town, a new transmission line to serve that substation, did a lot of distribution conversion work, and within the last couple of years you've done some additional distribution conversion to help improve the system, both in terms of voltage level, capacity, as well as aesthetics that go with that. You also built a new generation plant on the southeast side of town, which was done in conjunction with the substation project. And that worked out really well in terms of being able to combine some of the things that went in the substation with the generation plant to save you some money overall, so I'm happy to say you're in a lot better shape than you were 10 years ago. However, there's still some things that we found in our analysis of the system that we need to improve on, we think, and we'll be going through those today. Obviously, your system has changed a lot in the last 10 years. You've also had load growth on the system, which means that basically you've had new customers on the system, as well as existing customers that continue to add electrical load. And what that means is that the existing system infrastructure tends to get loaded up, and you need to keep adding more and more facilities to keep up with it, as well as the system, particularly older parts of the system, have been there for a long time. And that stuff, as it ages, needs to be replaced in order to keep the reliability level up on your system. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the existing system in Madison. You take, I'll try to keep it simple as I can here from one year's perspective, but please feel free at any time to jump in and ask questions if you have any, because I understand all this stuff and it makes sense to me, but a lot of times it doesn't make sense to the folks I'm talking to, so please jump in. 69 kV is the transmission voltage level in this area. East River Electric provides what we call transmission service, so those are the large power lines that you see coming in and out of town. There's 3 different lines coming in from East River system, which connect into your substations. Okay, so there's 3 substations. The power plant substation, which is in the southeast part of town, that's the oldest substation on your system. There's the green substation, which is up by the new community center, the northeast part of town, and the southeast substation, which of course was the one built in 2005. The new one, which is east of American Hotel.
That green substation, is that the one right across from the armory?
Yep.
That one right there?
Yep.
Okay.
So what happens at those substations is that the power is converted from the transmission voltage, or 69 kV, down to what we call distribution voltage. There's big transformers in the substations that bring the power from 69 kV down to 13.8 kV and 4.16 kV. In Madison, there are presently 2 different distribution voltage levels, 13.8 kV and 4.16 kV. The 4.16 kV system is the oldest stuff on the system. It used to be that almost all the system was 4160. And if you think about it, I guess, in terms of the power flow capabilities, 4.16 kV system can carry about 1/3 the amount of power the 13.8 kV system does. It's a linear relationship. So as you convert the system to a higher voltage, the same size cable can carry 3 times the amount of power. Okay, so as you continue to add more and more loads to your old system, you can imagine that the lines weren't necessarily designed to handle that. You know, back in the day, 50, 60 years ago, we didn't have all the electronics and so forth in the houses that we have today. So the system tends to get outgrown, I guess, and that's why we see conversion to the 13.8 kV level. And that 13.8 kV level would be similar to what we see almost every community going to, and in fact, most of them are already there. And unless you're in a really small town, that's what we're seeing across the board. So, on the distribution system, there are several circuits throughout the system. They start at the substation. There's 11 13.8 kV feeder circuits. There's 4 4.16 kV circuits that are fed out of the power plant substation. In addition to those circuits, there are also what we call some step-down transformers. They're kind of like mini substations out on the system that are fed off of 13.8 kV circuits that feed 4.16 kV areas. Okay, any questions so far? Lost anyone there? Okay, in addition to those facilities, you also have the generation plant, which does generate at 13.8 kV, and it has about 10 megawatts of capacity. To give you some perspective, the total system load at peak is about 19 megawatts. So you can, if it's a heavily loaded summer day or a really cold winter day, you can serve probably about half the town with that generation plant in the event that you had a major transmission catastrophe and needed to serve a local community through that plant. Okay, so One of the things that obviously impacts the level of improvements necessary on the system is load growth on the system. And what we've seen over the last 10 years is that there's been pretty steady growth, but not real significant growth. The line there, it shows about a 1.5 to 2% average load growth rate, which is pretty consistent for a community of your size in this area. You can see that the red line is the summertime, the blue line is wintertime peaks. And we did have a couple of off years there where it dipped a little bit, but it has come back. I guess what we've done is projected out kind of based on the past 10 years using a similar growth rate of 1.5 to 2%. And what that does is, I mentioned the 19.3 megawatts that you're at today. That would basically add, in the 10 years, about 30 more megawatts to that total. One item I would caution on that, though, is that if you have large customers come to town, that load growth projection rate could be off. I mean, I'm aware very recently of some pretty significant loads that are looking to come to town. The global Ulmer load, as well as the hospital and the elevator project that could happen. Those could have some pretty significant impacts on the load growth on your system. So that's something to keep in mind and keep in the back of our heads as we're thinking about some of the improvements we're going to talk about. One of them in particular is heat off of the load level on the system. So, questions on load growth? Okay, so let's talk about design criteria, and basically what design criteria means is that's the basis of our study in how we're going to judge the system and how we're going to judge what is a deficiency and how do we want to improve the system. So the first criteria we look at is reliability, and what this criteria means is single contingency design, or N-1 right here. It's a common term in utility planning, okay? And what it means is that for any piece of equipment on the electrical system, whether it be a transformer, a pole, a piece of line, we should be able to sustain the loss of that piece of equipment and still provide power to the customers on the system with some switching, without having a major outage for days or something like that. So it basically means that you can handle the loss of any one piece of equipment under peak loads or low loads or whatever situation for all transmission, substation, and distribution facilities. And again, this is a common distribution level planning criteria. If you're talking transmission level, sometimes you get into N-2, where you can handle two components, but we talk about being able to handle loss of any one component. The second item is voltage level. Okay, so ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, has certain guidelines on voltage levels, and we want to maintain what's called Class A service to all your customers. So it basically means that there's a certain amount of voltage level that's acceptable out at the customer's premises, and we want to maintain a voltage level at least that high. Otherwise, they can start running into issues with not being able to operate equipment properly and so forth. Okay, so again, we're looking at that under normal conditions as well as emergency conditions, meaning the loss of any single component. Third criteria is capacity, and basically what this means is we don't want to overload equipment. There are some, maybe large utilities that will push the limits on this. As a municipal, we tend to be a lot more careful because we don't have equipment inventories on transformers, cable, that kind of thing, where we can just go out and replace stuff if it fails prematurely. What overloading does is it causes premature failure of equipment. So you can run more power through a transformer or a cable than what's rated for. It just means it's going to break down faster. The insulation will break down faster, it'll cause premature failure. So we're very careful about making sure that we don't overload equipment as part of our criteria. And the fourth item is flexibility and expandability. We obviously want to have a system that is flexible enough that if we do have an outage, we can transfer the loads to other parts of the system without having to have customers out of power for a day or two, for example. And additionally, if we get someone like a Global Polymer that comes to town and wants to build a new facility in town, we don't want to have to tell them, sorry guys, it's going to take us a year or two to build a facility that can serve you electrically. You want a system that that is expandable and that has enough capacity in it that it can handle such situations. It's a fine line because you don't want to overbuild a system, but on the other hand, you want some expandability built into it to extra capacity. Okay, so with that, kind of describes kind of the background, I guess, of the planning methodology. I want to maybe just quickly have Jared show you the model that we built of your electric system, just to give you a little bit of a quick flavor for how we do the analysis.
The analysis software we use is Winnow, Millsoft, and basically what we do is work with Dennis in getting data on the system throughout the town, and we input various impedance and load characteristics in the model. And once we compile all the data, we put it into the model, and we can analyze the load flow based on voltage and amps on the system. So we get a good idea of what the system reacts to during different conditions where, for instance, this map I have shown right now is City of Madison and the electrical infrastructure under existing switching configurations, base system, where day-to-day operations, no outages or anything. So we model the system under base scenarios. Then we look at the different N-1 contingency scenarios where we lose a transformer, have to backfeed it through a switch, or backfeed it through a switchgear bus, or let's say we lose a feeder breaker and we have to backfeed that on the system. So we take a look at each of these scenarios and run analysis on it. So for instance, I'll do a quick analysis of this base system under existing peak conditions that have been seen in the previous peak, the historical peak of the system in the last 10 years. And basically, once you get it modeled, it's as simple as clicking a button and it creates this big report, and you can look at every piece of electrical conductor that's modeled on the system, and it gives you amperes and kW and kVAR, everything we use to monitor how well the system is performing, can perform. So everything looks good based on the analysis. The majority of the system looks pretty good, and you guys have done a fine job of maintaining it. And conversion to 13.8 kV is a great move. And basically what we found was that the 13.8 stuff is all in pretty good shape. I mean, it's just, what we did find is some, obviously, stuff that hasn't been converted over time it's aged, and those are the deficient areas. But we'll get into that later, I guess, a little more.
So this shows, what are the colors here?
Yeah, the colors here, basically, you set up the system map, and the red, this pink here is actually the campus, and that's on a different system. So our capital improvements do not affect that directly. We don't have any control over that. So, but black is good. Black is, everything's operating fine. The red is when voltage drops below a certain level, and below our standard criteria, which Chad touched on, and it alerts you of that. And like I said, things look pretty good.
So that's system intact. So now if we look at a situation where we've got a emergency condition, I guess.
Yep. We look at this scenario that I'm opening up. It's the loss of a power plant transmission bus at your power plant sub. So this is also under, we apply projected peak loads to the system. So this is with some load growth involved. What happens is you run the analysis, and in this case we have to, when we lose power to the power plant, so we ended up having to backfeed on the outer, in the system, on the distribution system. And by closing in various switches, we get power to these places. However, this area in particular where I'm putting the mouse, that's feeder circuits 3 and 4. And these are tough because there's no backfeeds out there. So runs the analysis, and there's some significant load out here. Where you're at 100 volts in this situation. So the end consumer, just on the primary system, there's about a 20 volt drop. So by the time it gets to the house, it's still got to drop several tiers of voltage drop.
So basically, areas in red means it's bad. It's outside of our planning criteria, in other words. So this happens to be the worst, worst case scenario that we found on your system. And, hopefully something that would be extremely rare to happen. It would mean that you lose the transmission line to the power plant, or the transmission bus there. But there are situations that can occur on your system that we wanted to demonstrate to you that you could have some real problems if they occurred at peak loading times, which this is. So just wanted to briefly demonstrate the modeling software to you and let you know how we arrived at the conclusions that we did and what, how we arrived at the numbers that we did in the report. If you happen to look at the report, there's a whole stack of what we call modeling runs in the back of it, in the appendix, that talk about different loading levels and under each different situation, what the voltage levels are. And I think all that information is very useful for Dennis and the guys, probably not so much for you folks, but at least you hopefully have a feel for what it means now. So we went through and did the analysis and basically came up with a list of deficiencies or problems on the system. Let's run through those real quickly here. Loss of the green substation, switchgear bus causes problems on the 4160 volt service after backfeeding. The one that Jared just demonstrated, the loss of the 69 kV transmission service to the power plant causes considerable voltage deficiencies. Also, we do have one of those step-down transformers that is overloaded in that scenario as well. Power plant circuits 3, 4, 5, and 6 do have some backfeeding issues in the event of a feeder outage. Some of that is not necessarily just a product of being the old 41.6 system. Some of it is a product of the conversion process to 13.8 kV, because if you think about it, you can't tie together the 4.16 kV circuits with the 13.8 kV circuits. So as we're converting 4160 circuits to 13.8, we're losing ties that used to be there. So we're creating some, we're losing some backfeeds as we're converting, but as we continue to convert everything to 13.8, we'll again gain all that reliability back. The 4.16 kV circuits fed from the step-down substations. These are the names of them: Proco, Division, Dairy Queen, and Residential. Do not have the capability to be easily backfed in the outage of those transformers. When future loading is applied to the system, meaning the additional 3 megawatts that we talked about over the next 10 years, those conditions just get worse, as one would expect. The aging condition of the switchgear, the 4.16 kV switchgear in the power plant, is of concern. It has reached, or it's expected, it probably deserves to be out at Prairie Village. It's museum quality equipment. It's pretty old stuff. And Dennis has gotten by. I mean, they've got thankfully enough circuits there that they can rob from another one if they have a problem with the breaker. But there's some really old stuff there that it's just of concern that if we were to have some big problems there, you might have to move parts for it and so forth. So it just shows again the need to get rid of the 4160 volt system. With the loss of the 69 kV transmission feed to the power plant in future loading conditions, you're running up against the edge, even on your 13.8 kV system, of having enough substation capacity. Okay, so separate from the 4160 volt stuff, as you continue to add additional load to your system, you're getting to the point where you're going to need to do some more substation expansion, even at the 13.8 kV level. What that means is you're going to have to add another substation transformer. The Southeast substation was designed with that in mind, so there is a plan to take care of that when the day comes that you need it. But I just want to make that point to all of you that if some of the load growth projections, are wrong and loads come onto the system sooner than projected in this report, for example, if they come on in 5 years, you might be at risk of running short on capacity, backup capacity anyway, for some hours of the year when loads are high. So it could force you to consider accelerating some of those improvements, at least the substation expansion improvements. Any questions on the deficiencies? Kind of zipping through this here. Okay, so with that, we've identified what we think the problems are on the system, and now it's time to talk about how we're gonna fix those problems and how we wanna prioritize them over the next 10 years, so that you stay ahead of both the system that is aging as well as able to serve the loads on the system with good reliability. The big thing on your system that we're proposing is distribution circuit improvements, continued conversion from 4160 volts to 13,800 volts. That has multiple benefits. You're converting old overhead lines to new underground lines. In our opinion, underground lines are a much better way to go, the way that most communities are going these days. They do cost a little bit more than overhead lines, but the benefits gained in terms of reduced maintenance, system reliability when storms come through, as well as aesthetics, just make for a much nicer system. We're also retiring old 4160 volt equipment that's reaching the end of its usable life, and we're adding tie switches and circuitry for increased operational flexibility and reliability.
Hey, Chad?
Yes.
Is there or what's the next, okay, we're at 13.8 is what we're converting to. What's the next one, or is there a next one
Yeah,
that, do we
no.
even need to look at that in the
There
next
could
10
be,
years?
but you'd have a long ways to go.
Okay,
I mean,
okay. I was
The
just
next one
making
would be
sure.
like a 25 kV level, but really, unless you're into, say a Sioux Falls situation or something like that, I mean, 13.8 kV will carry you a long way.
Okay.
We work for many communities, that are 5 times as large as you that still use 13.8 kV systems. Good
Okay.
question.
Just making sure we didn't need to
Yep.
jump
Yep.
over that.
Jump ahead.
Very good, thanks.
Yep. Substation expansion, as I mentioned, that's the other major item we've identified at this point in the plan. It's at the end of the study period, but if loads grow faster than projected, we may want to consider moving that up. Okay, so I know that this is going to be a little difficult to see, but I wanted to get at least something up so that you get at least a feel for where we're talking about improvements to the system. And this is in the back of the report if you want to refer back to it. But let's see, phase 1 is the southwest part of town here. Phase 2 is northeast. Phase 3 is kind of the central part of town. And phase 4 is southeast part of town. Phases 1 and 2 are what we consider the biggest problem areas on the system right now for the 4160 volt system. So we've really made those those are must-dos that really ought to be done in the next 5 years. Phases 3 and 4, there's still some issues on those parts of the system, but we feel that those can wait a while. So those are pegged for later on process. Okay, so we'll get right into costs. Phase 1, we're looking at over the next 3 years or so, 2013 to 2015. We talked about this with the advisory committee, and I think that they felt it would be good to split this into 3 different projects that would be done over first 3 years, at about $500,000 each. So that's the way we've got it set up here. And phase 1 doesn't work out that way. We've identified three ways that we can split into 3 projects that make sense, I guess, to make that happen. So that's what we're proposing. And again, that was the southwest part of town. That part of town, we have real difficulty feeding from other parts of town in the event of certain outages. So that's the reason for that being first priority. Phase 2 is about $1.1 million, and we're showing that the years after that, 2016, 2017, again, continued conversion of 4.16 to 13.8 kV in the northeast part of town. Phase 3, that was kind of in the central part of town. It's called the Dairy Queen step-down substation area. And the price of that one is about $800,000, slated for 2018, 2019 at this point. And phase 4 is the last, I guess, last remaining areas of 4.16 kV to 13.8 kV conversion. And that was the southeast part of the community. Those areas, we're just able to serve them better, is why they're slated for last. And they're in maybe a little better physical condition as well than some of the other stuff. About $1.83 million for that segment. After phase 4, you will have converted everything on your system to 13.8 kV. Okay, so the majority of your system will be underground 13.8 kV. There still will be some overhead 13.8 kV in your system that you may want to take on, years down the road if you have the goal of having an all-underground system. But after this project, it would finish conversion to 13.8 kV. And then phase 5 is that expansion of the southeast substation. When the day comes that your loads exceed the amount of reserve capacity, you really should be expanding that southeast substation to give you the necessary capacity that if you lost a substation transformer, you still have enough backup capacity throughout the other substation transformers. To summarize, over the 10 years, we're looking at about $6.8 million of electrical improvements. Just wanted to touch briefly on one other item that is really not part of the improvements we're recommending, but Chad mentioned that there is a plan DOT has to reconstruct some of Highway 34 in the south part of town, and that's presently slated for around 2017, 2018 timeframe. We did look at the cost to bury that segment of 13.8 kV overhead line and put it in here as a placeholder so that you know if you have to budget for that down the road, at least you know what it's going to cost. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
I have just a quick one, it's maybe more for Chad, but when we're burying these wires and things, do we look at, or do we work with the other, like telco companies and, I don't know, natural gas and all these other utilities to dig once, bury once?
Yeah, we have a system that we use, joint trench, is what we refer to
Okay.
it as, where basically every year we contact them and offer them the opportunity to utilize the same trenches that we
Okay.
use.
Cool, good.
Similar to the alley reconstruction project, try to get everything in the same trench, buried all at once.
The only other thing I quickly wanted to note was these costs are not indexed for inflation, so they're all present costs. You can't anticipate that in those out years, they will exceed this, so we pick the report up in 5 years. If it's an estimated area, it's gonna be higher.
Sure.
But we thought it was worth the time with such significant investment projections by the city anticipated to maintain the level of service to the customers, that it'd be worth the time to make a presentation and discuss this with you. Dennis is always available to answer questions, as I am as well, but glad to have this opportunity to present this.
We appreciate the opportunity to work for you as well, and the relationship and to be part of your team. I did have one other item that Chad asked me to talk about quickly, if I can. SBCC plan stands for Spill Prevention, Control, and Countermeasures. We developed an SBCC plan for the electric system over the last year or so. And Chad asked me to just briefly touch on what it is. Basically, what it is required by the EPA. Transformers hold oil. So anything over a certain amount of oil volume, you have to have a plan in order to show that you're preventing that oil from getting in navigable waters. Okay, So the rules are that if a site has more than 1,320 gallons of oil, you have to have a plan, and that you should have containment to, in the event of a spill, prevent oil from getting to water. There are special reporting procedures that are part of the plan. Depending on the amount of spill and the quantity of spill, you have to report it to the EPA or to the South Dakota DENR, depending on the size of the spill and the frequency of the spill. At some of your substations, the power plant and the green substations, as well as the storage yard at the power plant, there are some improvements that we are recommending to show that you have compliance with the requirements for on-site containment. And what it basically means is that they're gonna build some berms around some of the equipment, using oil absorbent socks and rock to contain the oil. It's not a large expense, but it is necessary at some of those sites where there's no containment presently. The southeast substation and the generation plant were designed with SPCC in mind, because we knew the regulations at that time, so they were built into the design to begin with, so nothing's required at those locations. So that's it. Just wanted to quickly describe it.
Well, thank you very much. It appears you've done a very thorough and comprehensive job in analyzing our whole system and the needs of the system and what's facing us in the future. And I thank you very much for your information and presentation tonight. I would ask if there are any questions on the part of the commissioners here before we proceed. Anything else?
If the commission would acknowledge the plan, might be an appropriate action. You've had it for
Yes.
about a month now to look at as well. Good for the perpetuity.
Is there a motion that we acknowledge the plan presentation by DGNR?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded that we acknowledge the presentation on the long-range electrical study report prepared for us by DGNR Engineering Consultants. Any questions or speaking on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion is carried. Thanks again, and we'll be in
Yep.
touch, so.
Thank you, and any questions anytime, feel free to ask.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Okay, number 3, under appearances, acknowledgements, correspondence, we have to acknowledge the 2013 alcohol license applications and set the date of hearing. Those applications, Jeff tells me now, are all in from our current alcohol license holders. I believe there are 20 in total. I won't take time to read all of their names, but the purpose would be to acknowledge those applications and set the date of hearing. Would that be in 2 weeks, Jeff?
Correct.
That would be December 10th at 5:35 PM.
Make a motion to acknowledge the 2013 alcohol license applications and set date of hearing of December 10th at 5:35.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded that we acknowledge the 2013 alcohol license applications with the date of hearing, December 10th at 5:35 PM. Any questions or speaking? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion is carried. We have one item listed under old business. That would be the second reading of ordinance 1533, the waste collection rates. I have received no comment, pro or con, regarding this proposed ordinance on waste collection rates. Any commissioners have anything to add or comment on?
This is just the updated collection rate for this year. Went up 75 cents, I believe. With that, I'd make a motion to approve second reading of ordinance 1533.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded that we approve the second reading of ordinance 1533, the waste collection rates for the city of Madison for 2013. Any questions or speaking? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. Okay, several items under new business. Number one, authorize mayor to sign professional services agreement for the 2013 electrical conversion project. A summary of that is in your packet. That relates, of course, to the first phase in the calendar year 2013 of the electric upgrade project that we just had explained to us. This would involve the conversion of approximately 15 city blocks from 4.16 kV circuit to the new 13.8 kV underground circuits. The services outlined, this would be the, Chad, then the preparation of the engineering requirements and documents for the first phase of this project, which we estimate to cost, without the city labor, that would be $562,000 is the estimated cost of the project, with the engineering fees estimated at $53,000. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that's an estimate, of course, as we get DGR and Dennis and get into more of the design and specifics, those budget numbers will become more finely tuned, if you will, or close, honed in on, so to speak, so we'll know more exactly what the budget would be as we're going into bid day and such like that. This was discussed, Chad just discussed this previously just now, but this is phase 1A. As we mentioned, phase 1 is going to be broken into 3 phases. They found a reasonable way to do that, and that was discussed with the Electric Advisory Committee and with this commission at budget time to try to break it into smaller size pieces, so to speak, to handle budget-wise, and that's what's been proposed. You lose a little bit of economy of scale with the smaller pieces, but at the same time, this provides a good flow for work for the involvement of the electric department, and Dennis can speak to that at any time. Their folks will be doing the terminations and new meter replacements and tie-ins and such like that. As we get closer to the budget, we will also keep the commission briefed as to what we're looking at for that. If there's any concerns or questions related to budget.
The timetable is listed there on the third page of your summary, with the project completion scheduled for November of 2013.
Dennis, anything, Dennis, or Chad, anything?
Any questions, comments from the commissioners? If not, I guess we would be prepared for a motion then to sign an agreement for this phase of the electric conversion project.
Say, Mayor,
Yes?
could I just ask a question? So part of the contract is a lump sum, and part is just hourly. This is what you're estimating, and contract administration and closeout would include. And then, the following services are not included in the proposal: soil exploration, surveying, easement, procurement, meter changeout, and cutover. I'm assuming, are those things that we're gonna do then?
Yeah, it's either expected that those aren't needed for this project, or that you're going to do them, depending on which of those items we're talking about.
Okay. And then my other question is, after page 3, you've got your hourly fee schedule. Like, an engineer, grade 1, from $72 an hour to $187 an hour. This scale, for the engineer, technician, or administrative, that is for the hourly portion of this contract, not the lump sum
Correct.
kind of thing. And typically, on the hourly, I don't know, for contract administration, is that usually an engineer that works on that, or a technician, or
For the distribution projects, it's usually a technician.
it's a
Most of
technician?
the hours.
And usually, because there's quite a variance between grade 1 and grade 15. I'm
Yeah.
assuming your employees are assigned a certain grade, is that correct?
Depending on level of experience.
Usually, is it in the middle of the grade?
Yeah,
or towards-
usually they run in the middle.
So for that administration, it would probably be somewhere between $60 and $70 an hour, probably.
Yeah, depending on who is involved.
Okay.
Anything else? What are your wishes?
I'll move to authorize mayor to sign the professional services agreement for the 2013 electrical conversion project pursuant to the contract submitted.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement with DG&R Consulting Engineers for the 2013 electric conversion project work. Any questions or speaking on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion is carried. Very good. Thank you. Pleasure to work with you, and look forward to a good year in 2013. New business
Again.
number 2 would be personnel recommendations as a part of your record.
Make a motion to approve personnel recommendations.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the personnel recommendations as presented. Any questions or speaking?
Mr. Mayor, just so you
Yes.
know, there's a change, Richard Nybert, we had acted on this earlier, and I had talked to Fred about this, and we felt it was appropriate for Richard to start at his new rate at this pay period. And so that's why this is
Mhm.
back on. Just thought I'd explain that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion is carried. New business number 3, bills for approval and bills for ratification.
I'll move to approve the bills. And
Sec-
approve and ratify the bills.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded that we approve and ratify the bills as presented. Any questions or speaking? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion is carried. The business number 4, Resolution 2826, authorizing the refunding of the electric generation plant bond issue. Jeff Heinemeyer referred to this last week as a possibility, and now the resolution is being presented to the commission for consideration. Jeff?
Yes, Mayor. As you explained last week, I mentioned that this resolution would be forthcoming this week, and what it would do, should you pass this, this would allow the city to actually refinance the existing debt that it has on our generation plant that was constructed in 2004. The city issued bonds for $4 million at that time. And there are approximately $3,100,000 still outstanding on those bonds. Actually, I take that back. $3,600,000 outstanding on those bonds. And currently, and that were issued at a rate between 3 and 7%. With the decrease in the interest rates that we've seen over the last several years and in the last few weeks, the interest rates that they're proposing now run between 1 and 3.5%. And so it seems like it could be very advantageous to do this. These are taxable bonds. Typically, city-issued bonds are tax exempt from federal and state and local income tax. And however, in this case, the IRS ruled that they should be taxable because we sell the capacity of that generation plant to Basin Electric out of Bismarck, North Dakota, and they are a taxable agency. So the IRS has ruled when the prime beneficiary of a project is a taxable agency, then they need to be taxable bonds. And it was an unusual project when we did that at the time because of that. And so we would be calling in those bonds on their call date of December 1st, 2014. We'd be actually calling December 15th of 2014. We'd call all of those bonds in and pay them off. And then we would issue these new bonds as soon as we can. Now, at these low rates. The money that we'd get from this bond sale that we do now would be put in the bank until 2014. And it'd be put in the bank, it'd be audited, it'd be, we'd invest in, they're called slugs, they're state and local government securities. And then it would be put in an escrow account. And then when these old bonds could be called in, they would be, and then they would just be paid off. We would never really see that or do anything with that. All the city would do would be just pay their normal bond payment on the newly issued bonds. Everything else would be behind the scenes and done by trustees and escrow agents and banks. And so the gamble on this, there would be that the savings could be higher if rates drop in the future, even more. You know, the gamble could also go the other way. We could, if we wait, we could be sitting around wondering why we didn't do this when we could have.
We had the shot.
And we're projecting, not we, but what we would do is we would hire a bond underwriter, Doherty and Company. They're based out of Minneapolis. They have an office in Sioux Falls. They would be our kind of fiscal agent to do this, and we would pay them, it's 1.47%, $54,000, and to do this, and it's in the resolution, I think, that their fee. And anyway, they would actually go out and they would prepare, and I brought, this is the book we would get if we do this in the end with all the documents, but they would prepare what's called an official statement, and it's about a 50, maybe 80-page document of everything about the city and who Basin Electric is, what this project is, what our top, taxpayers are, who they are, top utility users, what we're pledging for security, which the security that we give on this and that we gave on the first project was all of Basin Electric's payments. See, they make a monthly payment to the city. That monthly payment goes directly to the trustee in Sioux Falls. So we pledged Basin's payment to pay off these bonds. And that's another reason why it needed to be taxable, is we said we want to pledge, we don't want to have to pledge Madison's general taxing authority. We want to pledge this Basin Electric who we're going to sell the power to. And so that, their payment goes directly to the trustee in Sioux Falls. And however, there is an option that the city may impose a surcharge should Basin go bankrupt or close or, default or whatever. And we have already adopted that rate ordinance when we did this in 2004. It does say may, it doesn't say shall, it says may do that. And so that security would all stay in place. And as far as the savings, what we're projecting at rates as of last week are, how we did it, we just, I told the underwriter, I said, just assume that we're gonna pay it off the same term that we have left on the existing bonds, which is till 2025, is how much lower would our annual payment be? And it comes out to about $45,000 to $50,000 a year, less. Less. And it would, assuming that the rates, we could sell these bonds at the rates that we projected last week, in doing that, just taking so much off each year, it would be about $600,000 in savings. Now, obviously, and how these underwriters work this is, well, $1 in 2025 isn't worth $1 today. So they factor it back. It's called present value savings. And they, in today's dollars, that would amount to just slightly less than $500,000. And, but that was based on the rates a couple weeks ago. Then I asked him, I said, well, let's be very conservative. Let's be conservative. Let's assume rates go up, whatever. I said, what do you think rates could possibly go up? And he said, well, if we add 1/4% on, that would be very conservative. I said, okay, now what are the savings? And it still came out to about $400,000, more than $400,000. So we're looking at savings between, I think, $400,000 and up to $600,000. Now, a rule of thumb is that if we did this, we would be issuing $3.6 million in bonds. And again, this doesn't count towards our debt limit, it doesn't even add to our debt level because of the old one, it's a refunding. But anyway, $3.6 million, they say that typically, if you can save 2% of your new bond issue, it's kind of worth doing. And if you can't save 2%, then maybe you should just wait and see. Again, when I mention these costs and these percentages, that's after all our fees. Our underwriter, our trustee, you have to hire an accountant to audit this escrow account. It's after everything. 2% is kind of a rule of thumb. Based on our numbers, it came out between 13 and 15%. I've really never seen it that high. So in my mind, this is kind of a no-brainer, but it's entirely up to you. Because again, the risk you're taking is, well, what if rates drop in the next few months or a year or whatever? We could have saved even more.
Well, there's an old saying, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. I'd rather be a little piggy and not be a hog. I think $500,000 to $600,000 is pretty good. And I think because of the uncertainty that would be the thing to do.
And what this would do, by adopting this resolution, this would authorize the mayor and the finance officer to actually sell the bonds the day that it would happen. It's gonna be at least a month. I talked to him today, and he really thinks it'll probably be closer to the first of the year. Just because you get around the holiday, first of all, the earliest we could even legally do it is 20 days from Thursday. And then, we have to prepare this official statement that I showed you, because this goes to potential people that are gonna loan us the money, people that read this, and it'll be more like banks, mutual funds, pension companies, that type, and go, well, who is Madison? What are they all about? And who's Basin Electric? And what is this project? And our audit goes in here and all of that. And so it'd be 20 days from Thursday, and it's gonna probably take us close to that long to get this ready, this official statement. And with the holidays, he just thinks it'd be realistic, more like the first of the year or so, to look at doing it. But this would authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign the documents and proceed with it. And we would do that based on the advice and working with our underwriter, because they actually handle the bond sale. They go out and find the buyers and do all the financial work and that type of thing, so.
And that's over the next, till 2025?
Yeah, this would be spread out till 2025.
And that's the same due date as we have now.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the same, just
Yeah.
dropping the interest rate.
Right.
Any questions? Comments? What are your wishes?
I'll move the
Resolution?
approval of Resolution 2826, authorizing refunding of the electric generation plant bond issue.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2826, authorizing the refunding of the electric generation plant bond issue. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried.
Mayor,
Yes,
could I discuss just one other thing briefly?
sure can.
In doing this, we've also looked at all the city's bond issues, not only this generation plant. And it would appear that it might be advantageous. The city has about $1 million left on its bonds it issued for Lewis and Clark payment. $975,000 left. And that one is worth looking at too. It's not near the savings, it's not near the size, but it's still, it's a $50,000 net present value savings, and which is 5% based on that number I was telling you. You know, the 2% is kind of a rule of thumb, 2 to 2.5, but this would still be 5%. And so, with your permission, I'd like to have the bond attorney draft a resolution for you guys to consider at next week's meeting,
Okay, sure.
okay?
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move to new business number 5, authorize the purchase of a police vehicle from the state bid program. You have the state bid information as a part of your packet. We have the quote from Prostrollo's Auto Plaza in Madison that they will honor the state bid, and with one option of a spotlight on the vehicle. This would be a 2012 model Police Interceptor utility all-wheel drive.
It's a misprint, Mayor. That'd be a 2013.
Oh, 2013. Okay,
Excuse me. Yeah.
correction there, a 2013 model. Honoring the state bid and with the one option of a post mount spotlight, the total unit price of $25,943. And that will be purchased under our 2013 budget, Jeff?
Correct.
Right, this is a routine replacement of one of our police vehicles. Anything, we don't have any representatives here, but anything to add, Jeff, on that?
No, this is authorized under state law, that we can buy off the state bid, or we can buy from someone who is willing to match the state bid, but it has to be exactly the state bid. That's why I asked Darwin to get me a copy of the state specs that's attached to your agenda. And it is identical. And even the option is listed under state bid too.
Yep.
Because you have to do that, because otherwise someone could say, well, you know, yeah, we're gonna buy off state bid, but, you know, we really wanna add this and that, and you can't do that. Because then the next guy who didn't get the bid said, well, if I'd have known you were gonna add this and that, then I could have bid and been competitive. But the state did bid a light and spotlight. And you can see that at the bottom of the specs there.
Yep.
So this, I guess I think it's completely allowable. Would you agree, Chad?
Mr. Mayor, I'll just add that the Chief Pulford has sent an email around to all of the officers, and they had some choices, a couple of choices on the vehicle, and this is the one that the officers chose as well, so that's kind of right in line with what they think is most usable and what they want to use.
And we're in the rotation
Yes,
for this vehicle.
yeah, this is a budgeted item.
Motion?
So, yep, so with that, I guess I'll authorize the purchase of the police vehicle from the state bid as presented here.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded that we authorize the purchase of the new police vehicle from the state bid program in the amount of $25,943 with Prostrollo Auto Plaza of Madison, South Dakota. Any questions or speaking? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. The business number 6, approve the November 20th Airport Board minutes, which are attached.
I would just add, the couple notable things in this airport meeting was the approval of the CIP, which is the existing improvement plan, and the board also voted to continue with KLJ as the engineering firm for another 5 years.
Mhm.
And with that, I would move the approval of the November 20th airport board minutes.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded that we approve the November 20th Airport Board minutes. Any questions or speaking? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. New business number 7, we have to approve the capital improvement and validation plans for the Madison Airport. That information is attached to your agenda packet. I guess Commissioner or Chad or whoever wishes to outline the provisions that were, we do this annually, right? This is an annual exercise of the update of the airport, and we have an ongoing airport improvement program, which has been going on for a number of years, and according to this schedule, looks like it will continue for a number of years. So, Chad, do you have any comment on the
Yeah, I guess I can.
items?
This is a similar plan that's been in place for several years, working toward the parallel taxiway, of course, the wetland mitigation, is to proceed that. Next year would be the wetland mitigation and design, and in 2014 would be the apron reconstruction and the construction of the taxiway itself. This has been reviewed, as Commissioner Abraham had indicated, by the airport board, and recommended approval, as you noted in the minutes. There is a chance that some things could be pushed back if some environmental matters are not cleared through the FAA channels. It's out of our control, but if it does get cleared, airport wants to proceed, as it sounded from the meeting I was at,
Yep.
and just get things moving.
Right. And, yeah, I would very much, Chad was right on with the number there. The environmental assessment on that wetland mitigation has been turned in since April and
Yeah.
hasn't really moved. So,
Have they figured out what they need to do for mitigation and submitted it, or,
Well,
I know that was a big,
it has to do with the wetlands, really, and
Yeah.
trying to delineate which ones we can do, and they just need to buy off on the plan.
Okay.
Instead of mitigating for a larger area, which, and a preliminary plan, that they took a common sense approach, to look at it with us, say, hey, you know, there's other alternatives here, we're gonna mitigate for this. They're just clearing our concept, which one of the issues I think we're trying to clear is an on-site detention. Instead of having to buy more property, they have a detention pond. That's all part of the backlog. And then I don't know if it's so much a controversy with our plan as it's just their backlog with plans from all over.
so as long as that gets signed off on, then next year will be,
well, and then they did kind of say, what is the failed dates? Middle of February or end of February?
I think February sometime, if it's not done by February, probably the end of February.
Then this
they
will-
won't be moving the,
Everything will go back a year.
Items 1 through 5, items 1 through 5 will all shift back 1 year.
okay.
And
So
then
there-
next year, you'll see the revised plan.
So the two items listed for 2013, that would be the wetland mitigation, and KLJ is pushing to get that moving up, and the design for the construction of the parallel taxiways for the concrete runway. There are two things listed for 2013, and then it extends out to 2022. I noticed that the the FAA federal funding is listed at 90%. 10% state and local. Do we know what the state and local percentages are being calculated at?
5 and 5.
5 and 5, okay? Well, any
So we
questions?
only have half of the sponsors, so we have plenty put away to make it all the way through step 5, right?
Next year for sure, and yeah, actually, I believe with the last budget cycle, there was some added to the reserve to take it through all the way through 5. Yeah.
So all the major construction we've been planning for quite some time and have that set aside, so that won't have any, hopefully, any impact on that.
Okay, any questions or comments on the capital improvement and validation plans for the Madison Airport? If not, could we have a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the capital improvement and validation plans for the airport for 2013.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded that we approve the capital improvements and validation plans for the Madison Airport for 2013. Any questions or speaking? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion is carried. That completes the regular order of business for this meeting. We do have an executive session scheduled under SDCL 1-25-2(3). Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.